primary goals of this show is to highlight obscure games that are slipping under the radar. So imagine my surprise when I stumbled across Blades of Time on the release list a few months back. I took one look at a screenshot and something looked familiar about it. Then I found out that the heroine's name was Ayumi and the game was made by Gaijin Entertainment? This is a sequel to X-Blades? That shitty hack and slash with the busted enemies whose only noteworthy quality was the fact the heroine wore a thong? Why would you make a sequel to that game? It sucked! Even stranger still, the sequel wasn't being published by one of the usual schlock peddlers like South Peak or Graffiti. No, this is actually being published by Konami. And even crazier than that, they put my personal hero, 99 Nights 2's Tak Fuji, on it as the game's producer. Extreme. What's more, the game actually released a few weeks ahead of schedule and at a budget price. But perhaps the biggest surprise of Blades of Time was the fact that the game was actually pretty good. Mind you, you wouldn't notice this at first. The game opens with a stupid intro sequence full of terrible writing.
Hate to kill idiots.
Here, Ayumi and her partner Zero are killing their own guild so they can use an orb to get to Dragonland, at which point Ayumi immediately begins complaining about being stuck in Dragonland, and then you have to find a way to get out of Dragonland. What's more, throughout the adventure, Ayumi continually babbles to herself non-stop, spouting some of the dumbest dialogue ever.
God, it's so hot here. It's unbearable. I hope this path won't lead me to the center of the world. If I hadn't come here on my own, I'd have thought that I was in hell right now. Or maybe I am in hell. Oh well, who knows? What's going on? Have I stumbled into something again? Oh no. Damn it. These ancient places are always full of surprises. Time has started again. Who's doing that? What the hell? Spiders? They're huge! Where did they come from? I hate spiders. It looks like a big button. I wonder what will happen if I step on this thing. Yeah, this is the button for sure. It must be the door switch. Hey! Monsters! Are you here? How sweet! I'm falling in love with these corals. They're waiting for me. How do they know I'm here? Do I really make so much noise?
And yet, somehow this is preferable to Metroid Other M's monologues. Of course, it's at this point that you've probably noticed another thing about the game. It actually looks shockingly good. Running on version 3.0 of Gaijin's own Dagor engine, it's not going to knock Unreal off the map anytime soon, but it does suffice, even though there's a few frame rate hiccups. The environments, however, look very nice, and some of them are downright inspired, as are some of the enemy designs. This is sure to be a relief to many gamers who were disappointed to see the switch from the more anime-styled art of the previous game to a more realistic art style. Despite the art shift, the game has not become bland at all. And honestly, though I generally prefer anime-style art, I think this new art style works better for this game. I felt X-Blades was trying too hard. It was a little too overdone. I mean, Gaijin is a Russian company, after all. So this brings us to the most important question, the gameplay. The controls are perfectly functional and work just fine. And the combat, well, it also works. It's nothing special. You've got an X button combo and a Y button combo. You can't really mix and match between them, though. There's a quick dash, which surprisingly you can perform in midair. You get a couple spells that you can cast, and you can click in the right stick to go into a third-person shooter mode. It's perfectly functional, but aside from the fact that you can do a homing dash and it blends hack and slash and third-person shooter better than some other games that have attempted it, the combat really isn't particularly noteworthy. It works, but it's not really deep. So what we've got here is a mediocre hack and slash with horrible writing and great-looking graphics. But then you beat the first stage. Then you get the game's title gimmick, the ability to rewind time. This isn't Prince of Persia style undo your mistake stuff either. Rather, it's Blink's style team up with your past self time rewinding. And while at first this may just appear to be a mechanic used to solve puzzles, and indeed there's plenty of somewhat clever puzzles that use this mechanic, where the game really shines is when you start trying to use it in combat. Here's an example. Whip out your gun and shoot at an enemy, then rewind time, and while your past self is providing you with cover fire, you can rush the enemy down. Or you can move a little to the left or the right and continue to fire, then rewind time again. Now there's two of your past selves shooting at the enemy. You can make an entire firing squad of past selves. Or how about this? An enemy can only be hit from behind? Not a problem. Attack from the front, rewind time, and while your past self is distracting them from the front, you can attack from behind. Oh, what's that? That enemy thinks it's going to cast a spell? Not if I rewind time and stop it from doing that. There are tons of brilliant ways to take advantage of the time rewind mechanic. And here is where the game gets all of its fun. Suddenly, the combat goes from being mindless button mashing with no depth to something shockingly strategic and rewarding and very, very enjoyable. However, despite this fact, there are many people who still insist the game is a subpar slog. I understand why this is. Chances are they weren't using time rewind enough. You see, the game almost never forces you to use that time rewind. Nearly every encounter can be beaten just by running up to enemies, wailing on them, and dodging a lot. However, this can quickly turn the game into an irritating slog, as most of the enemy encounters are balanced around the time rewind mechanic, meaning they can almost all best be described as way too many enemies that are way too strong and do way too much damage while taking way too many hits to kill. Yeah, you can beat them by spamming X and dodging around, but wow, is the game going to get irritating and boring. It's not even a challenge, it's just annoying. So don't do it. Use the time rewind. And it's a good thing that they seldom force you to use the time rewind as well. Because if they did, then, well, chances are there would only be one way to use it. And the game would just be wink, wink, nudge, nudging you into solving the puzzle of beating the combat, rather than letting you actually fight and come up with your own strategies. But since the enemies can be defeated just by wailing on them, that means that, yes, you can devise your own strategies. You can use your own brain. And that's what makes the game so rewarding. Because when you pull off some kind of crazy time rewind setup, that's all you. That wasn't scripted, that was all your own brilliance. Look at this one I captured right here. I've got two of my past selves laying down cover fire, while one of my past selves and my current self are doing finishers at the exact same time. That's all me! And the grin on my face when I pulled this shit off was immense. This right here is what makes the game so enjoyable. So, what's wrong with it? Not really anything noteworthy if you ask me, aside from the way air dashes work. As I said, you can dash in mid-air, but strangely at the end of the dash, rather than falling like normal, you drop straight down immediately. This isn't a bug, it's just how it works, but it looks weird and it makes the game's one challenging jumping puzzle kind of awkward. That said, you'll still be able to make it past this because of the game's save system. You see, in X-Blades, the game saved at every room, so when you died, you just got to retry the room, allowing each room to be challenging, which would have been great if the game wasn't a broken mess. They basically do the same thing here, saving in every room, and in the aforementioned jumping puzzle, they save every 2 jumps. That's not even an exaggeration, they really do. This isn't autosave, this is friggin' auto-save state. And luckily, yes, when you die and respawn, it is very quick. There is no loading. Also, the music is a bit disappointing. It's not that it's bad, it's just that there's only about, 5 music tracks in the entire game. Made even more disappointing considering the fact that the sheer amount and variety of music was one of X-Blade's few redeeming qualities. Aside from that, though, any other bugs are rather minor. The occasional frame rate drop or enemies' animation glitching out while you rewind time, nothing major, no real showstoppers. Honestly, I was personally surprised at how polished the game was. But then I checked some message boards and noticed plenty of people complaining about how glitchy they found the game. And Eurogamer's review even complained about the game dropping to single digits due to particle effects. Either we're all having radically different experiences with this game's glitches, or people are just over-exaggerating the bugs they're bumping into. I'm not sure which, so take that with a grain of salt, but personally, I played through the whole game and didn't have any major issues. So overall, it's not a bad game. However, it has one more strange surprise up its sleeve: the multiplayer. Now, early reports made it seem like this game would have co-op throughout the entire campaign. This was false. That's what happens when you translate promotional material from Russian to Japanese to English. Rather, the multiplayer is limited exclusively to a mode called Outbreak. No, it's not a Horde mode, it's a League of Legends mode that can be played either two-player cooperatively or competitively online. Obviously, you can't use time rewind here, but I did find it rather enjoyable just because of the slightly strategic nature of the combat, and I had a lot of fun with versus battles. The netcode is pretty solid, and it does support global multiplayer, as I've fought a shocking number of players from Japan. I guess Blades of Time actually has advertising in Japan? Either that or X-Blades has a cult following because it gained legendary Kusoge status, in which case that would explain a whole fucking lot about this game's existence. But what's really interesting is that completing minor achievements in this mode gets you runes, which can be used to make equipment you can use in both multiplayer and single player. In turn, equipment you find in single player can also be brought into multiplayer. It's an interesting little twist. The game has no in-game timer, but I'd estimate Blades of Time lasts about 10 hours, as it divides itself into about 10 rather lengthy chapters. I know that doesn't sound long to a lot of people, but remember, this is a hack and slash, and for that kind of game, that's actually a pretty decent length. Personally, I found Blades of Time very enjoyable and strangely enthralling. I gotta admit, I have a very short attention span, and I seldom find myself glued to a game this much, but I was just hooked on Blades of Time, and even after beating it, I still find myself going back to it and playing it again. I could understand people's trepidation about picking this game up at a $60 price tag, but again, Konami was smart and they sold it at a budget price of $40. Mind you, I hate that $40 is considered budget this generation, but I believe I can safely say this game is worth the price of admission. I give it a 4 out of 5. Yes, seriously. And pro tip, if you're not having fun with this game, then chances are you're just not abusing time rewind enough. Anyway, this is Gel, and you've been GameBabbled. See ya.